At 1:01 a.m., the President of the United States threatened a lawsuit over a joke, not a policy disagreement, not a national security leak, a joke about Jeffrey Epstein 3 days after the DOJ released over 3 million pages containing his name more than 5,300 times. This isn't about hurt feelings, and this is about what prosecutors call consciousness of guilt, and it's playing out in real time on a public stage. Trevor Noah made a quip at the Grammys. Simple enough. After Billie Eilish won Song of the Year, he said Trump wants Greenland almost as much as he wants an island to replace Epstein's, to hang out with Bill Clinton. The crowd laughed. Some gasped. Noah reminded everyone it was his final year hosting, then asked, "What are you going to do about it?" Trump answered at 1:01 a.m. Eastern on Truth Social. Quote, "Noah, a total loser, better get his facts straight and get them straight fast. It looks like I'll be sending my lawyers to sue this poor, pathetic, talentless dope of an MC and suing him for plenty." He called the Grammys virtually unwatchable and said Noah is almost as bad as Jimmy Kimmel. But here's what matters from a legal standpoint. He claimed Noah said something false and defamatory by suggesting he spent time on Epstein Island. He wrote, "I have never been to Epstein Island nor anywhere close, and until tonight's false and defamatory statement, have never been accused of being there." Let's pause there. Why does the timing matter? Because just 72 hours before this late-night threat, the Department of Justice released the largest dump of Epstein files in history, January 30th, 2026, over 3 million pages, more than 2,000 videos, 180,000 images. The New York Times reported finding over 5,300 references to Trump and related terms in those files. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, Trump's own appointee, held a press conference saying the DOJ didn't protect or not protect anybody. That's prosecutorial language for we're trying to cover ourselves. Congressional Democrats immediately pushed back. Representative Ro Khanna, who co-sponsored the Epstein Files Transparency Act, said the DOJ identified over 6 million potentially responsive pages, but only released about 3.5 million. Where are the other 2.5 million pages? What's in the FBI 302 victim interview statements that weren't released? What about the draft indictment from the 2007 Florida investigation? Blanche said they're in compliance with the law, but half the files are still sealed. Let that sink in. This is the context in which Trump fired off his 1 a.m. lawsuit threat against a comedian. Here's what they're not telling you about defamation law. Truth is an absolute defense. If Noah's statement, or even the implication of his joke, contains factual accuracy, there's no case, period. But Trump didn't just threaten a lawsuit. He made a specific claim that he's never been accused of being on Epstein Island, not even by the fake news media. That's a provable statement. From a prosecutor's perspective, you don't make provable claims unless you're confident or unless you're trying to shape public perception, regardless of legal merit. Trump referenced George Stephanopoulos. Why? Because ABC settled a defamation case Trump brought against Stephanopoulos for $15 million in December 2024, not because Trump won on the merits, but because ABC chose not to fight. That's critical. Settlement is not vindication, but it creates a pattern. Threaten, pressure, settle, claim victory. The problem this time? Noah's joke didn't make a factual claim. It made a comedic inference based on publicly documented association. And those documents just got dumped by the DOJ 3 days prior. Let's talk about what's actually in the record. Trump and Epstein were friends for approximately 15 years, from the late 1980s until around 2004 or 2005, depending on whose timeline you believe. Former Mar-a-Lago employees testified in depositions that they were regularly sent to provide services for Epstein, and they warned each other about his behavior. One of Epstein's victims testified that Ghislaine Maxwell made it clear the victim was available for Trump and his friends. The file noted, quote, "Nothing happened, but Maxwell's language was explicit. Oh, I think he likes you. Aren't you lucky?" flight logs show Trump on Epstein's plane, not to the island, that's accurate, but on flights with Epstein in 1997. In the January 2026 file release, there are emails between Epstein and Steve Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist, from 2018 discussing Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. There are photos of Trump at social events with Epstein dating back decades. Now, none of this is evidence of criminal wrongdoing, but it's evidence of proximity, of association, of access. And that proximity is exactly what makes the joke sting and why Trump responded at 1 a.m. Pay attention to this next part. The Epstein Files Transparency Act passed the House 427-1, unanimous in the Senate. Trump signed it himself in November 2025. It required the DOJ to release all unclassified Epstein files by December 19th, 2025. They missed the deadline. The initial release on December 19th was heavily redacted, hundreds of pages entirely blacked out. Faulty redaction techniques allowed the public to recover some blacked out content. The DOJ had to pull 16 files offline within 24 hours. Then on January 30th, they released 3 million pages and said, "We're done. We're in compliance." But Blanche admitted they identified 6 million pages total. Congressional oversight committees have issued subpoenas. House Democrats wrote a letter calling the review urgent ahead of Attorney General Pam Bondi's upcoming testimony. And Trump's deputy AG is the one holding press conferences saying they didn't protect the president. When a prosecutor has to say that out loud, it tells you something. This isn't just about Trump's ego or Noah's joke. This is about institutional credibility under pressure. The DOJ is supposed to operate independently of the White House. That's foundational to rule of law. But Trump appointed Todd Blanche as Deputy Attorney General. Blanche is defending the release strategy while also saying publicly there's no cover-up. Meanwhile, the files show unredacted names of 43 out of 47 victims. A Wall Street Journal review confirmed it. Victims' advocacy groups issued statements condemning the DOJ for re-traumatizing survivors, while Epstein's enablers continue to benefit from secrecy. Think about what that means. The Department of Justice, under legal mandate from Congress, released files that exposed victims but withheld half the potentially responsive documents. And when a comedian makes a joke about it, the president threatens a lawsuit at 1 a.m. Here's what precedent this sets. If Trump follows through and files, discovery would be extraordinary. Noah's legal team would have the right to subpoena records about Trump's relationship with Epstein. They could depose witnesses. They could request communications. Trump knows this. Every defamation lawyer in the country knows this, which means the threat is likely performative, designed to chill speech, not to litigate facts. But it's also designed to dominate the news cycle, to shift attention away from the 3 million pages and onto the fake news narrative. From a prosecutor's perspective, you watch behavior under pressure. And this behavior, threatening a comedian 3 days after the largest Epstein file release in history, is pressure response. The Epstein files aren't going away. Congressional oversight continues. Victims groups are pushing for full transparency. Journalists are combing through 3 million pages. And the President of the United States just told the public he's never been accused of being on Epstein Island, a claim that will now be scrutinized in every archived interview, deposition, and court filing. Here's the legal truth. Defamation cases are hard to win when you're a public figure. The standard is actual malice, knowing falsehood or reckless disregard for the truth. Noah's joke was commentary on publicly documented facts released by Trump's own DOJ 3 days earlier. That's not defamation, that's protected speech. But the threat itself, that's the strategy, because in the court of public opinion, the threat is the message. And the message is, stay quiet or I'll sue you for plenty. The question isn't whether Trump will file. The question is whether the public and the press will let the threat work. Stay informed. More truth and accountability coming.